I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy. Think that it was meant to be. Living in a time.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to another episode of Tactical Awareness. It's Season 1, Episode 35, and we are winding down ITS14. My name's Ash, and I am here joined by Owen and Dan to bring you more Infinity. And today we're going to be talking about reinforcements. Not so much the rules themselves, but more what it means probably for the larger, I guess, like chain of releases and scheduling with Corvus Belli, what we kind of glean about the future, and what our impressions are so far of this rule set, and sort of this like live action preview we've gotten from CB since Gen Con for the last few weeks of the ITS Season 14. So let's jump in, see what everyone's doing, and get this going.
The highest quality of fucking around.
Just like your mic.
Is my mic all screwed up tonight?
No, you just sound like you're in a down the hall.
Echo. I'm using my phone again. All right, sweet. Well, that's because I'm on my phone, because I've got a house guest. My mom is at the desk where I normally record, so I'm doing this on my phone in my room so I don't wake everybody up. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Tonight is going to be an extra fun, or at least I don't sound as bad, I think, as I did when I was at the cottage. The internet connection was completely garbage. So hopefully this will be slightly better. We're into a late season episode now. This is episode 35 of season 1, and we're coming up on season 2. We've only got
people are still listening to us.
I can't either. I'll be honest. I don't think they are. Maybe it's all just ended. We have probably 5 to 6 weeks left before we're into ITS15. So it's kind of hard to make evergreen content at this point, because we don't know what the next season holds. And we have a whole huge new wave of new rules encompassing the reinforcement profiles to talk about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put our tinfoil hats on, I think, a bit tonight and talk about what it feels like that's going to mean going forward. We're also going to jump in and talk with the mailbag and see what's going on with all of our listener questions. And thank you, Rich, for filling those back up. And then talk about what everybody else has been doing. What have you guys been doing? What has been the infinity-ness? Did you finish Baldur's Gate, or did you do any Infinity stuff this week?
I did not finish Baldur's Gate, but I did do some Infinity. I played. Eamon happened to come by the city. We played some Nomad v Nomad, Bakunin versus Corregidor.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Did you finish painting your tag?
No, he's mostly painted, but now I'm we've got a tournament this coming weekend, and I'm probably playing QK, so I'm making sure I've got all my QK together.
With new profiles?
Yeah, why not? You're in the army, right?
Definitely. Yeah, do it. I'm excited. I want to hear how that goes this weekend, because I feel like QK got a real glow up. How do you feel about the QK? Yeah.
The two Harris is the real glow up. The new profiles are great. The Burtuk and the Corsans are above the curve, in my opinion. The Corsan specifically. But just the fact that they can have a second Harris now, which means it's core Harris for them, or core Harris rather.
Mm-hmm.
Very relevant.
It's more +1 burst throwaways.
It's more +1 burst flaming bonus damage Feuerbach.
Yeah.
So much flaming damage.
Yeah. And then now, because of the Corsan who got added in, and they also went, you can have an extra Harris, you have the murder Harris that is the Azrael, and then you also have a core of whatever you feel like, and then you can also have a Corsan team of them plus what are they called? Caplands.
Right.
Because weirdly they joined Caplands. I'm sure there's a reason for that, but it doesn't really make sense to me, but that's fine. Corsairs of the Gate. 6-2, climb plus, CC attack -3, natural born warrior, CC 21, quadruple chain rifle.
So the quad chain rifle, the peace trading, like where you could like hurt a tag. You know what I mean? Like, because you're just dipping it with so many templates is wild.
There's nothing in the game that wants to take a quadruple template.
Nope.
No.
Nobody will take that. You'll have to dodge or
25%. Well, so that's the thing is you have a 25% chance of failing if you're armor 8 against damage 13, and you're rolling 4 dice, which means you're probably taking a wound no matter what.
But you can't dodge because then you fail and then you take the damage anyways.
Yeah.
Or you succeed and you dodge into melee. Then all he is CC 21 natural born warrior inflicting a -3 CC back at you.
Yeah.
Why? Why do they get both? Like 13 points, thanks. And a heavy pistol to boot. I don't know if you're ever going to shoot, but you might.
You just might.
It is a crazy profile. It is amongst, I think, the like why profiles in the update, I think, for sure.
But can you make it work?
Well, that's a good question. What are the missions?
Highly classified, or whatever the variant's called now. The Armory, and I forget. Let me find out. It is also
Group mission, random objective mission, and that
Supremacy.
No, then nice, good old reliable supremacy.
Yeah, so you have, can you clear a room with quad chain rifle? Can you disable their hand with quad chain rifle?
Quad chain rifle, yeah.
And kill them.
With quad chain rifle. So basically your plan is to apply quad chain rifle and or flaming fear block to all these problems.
Well, I'm going to bring 2 Corsans in a link of 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Kaplan will be a paramedic or doctor. And he will shoot doctor bullets as needed. Because Corsans are Phys 13 for some reason as well. So if they don't die, if they just go unconscious, you're just like, hey, get up. There's work to be done. And
go get him. Go get him.
The other group will be 2 Azrael Link.
See, I was thinking of bringing Drews just because I just want to try something different again. The last time I brought Drews, I hadn't played in a really long time. And it's kind of the same now again. But I was like, my lists weren't even working. I didn't have them printed off. And then they weren't even loading on my phone. So it was just like discombobulated from the start. But now
right.
It's like, I feel like I could do something a little better. But with Armory, I just want to do climbing plus shenanigans again with Starmada.
I'm going to chase you up those walls. Because Corsan's also climbing plus.
I'm going to go up 30 inches.
Everyone on the table. I was going to say, everyone on the table is climbing plus. You're a race to the top.
Do you have MSV?
Yeah.
Perfect.
You're both playing this event?
Yep.
Amazing. I'm excited. What
what
are you going to take?
I don't know about Dan.
If we get first and second again, I swear.
So you're going to take Starmada though, right, Dan?
I don't know. I have no idea. I've been building O12 lists because I'm like, I haven't played Gangbusters in so long and Team Serious. And then I'm like, And then maybe I just bring Drews because I like to lose. So, I got to be that special snowflake.
There's a temptation to play Maximus as well.
Oh, really? You think so?
I have the Aristia giant Myrmidon one.
Sure.
And he matches the same paint style as my Steel Phalanx army. And while I know he can't go in Steel Phalanx, I can play like a vanilla Olaf. Or Olaf. Aleph.
Yeah.
Olaf the Snowman.
But Maximus in and of himself is pretty cool, but he's not cooler than a tag team of Corsans.
Which makes you want to try all the templates instead of just like one big hitty piece, which is probably better, to be honest. Like that Corsan thing can fall apart. And you still have a ton of stuff to fall back on in that list.
Oh no,
Maximus
20 points
70,
has died.
Yeah, it was opposed to Maximus being like, almost a quarter of the army, which is a bigger lever to have fall apart for sure. Well, for me, I have been prepping terrain and tables and organizing stuff for Summer Siege, which, knock on wood, is going to go off without a hitch on Sunday this week coming up. And no, wait, not this week, it is this weekend coming up. Which is exciting and is going to be our season ender. So we'll have our final big ITS for season 14 happening in just 7 days. So if you haven't got your ticket paid for, get that done. Get registered, and we will see you on Sunday at the Legion Hall for some good old Infinity. While we playing games this weekend, should be fun. So we'll post up lots of pictures on social media. So it's just really been just getting like all the tournament stuff organized, getting the tables all done and like squared away, and organizing anybody else who's going to be helping me to come and set up and meet up in the morning to get that all done. So it is mailbag o'clock. Let's jump in. And as always, you guys have done a great job of filling up the mailbags with relevant questions to the Infinity. We've got, it looks like at least 3 weeks of questions here. So please keep them coming. And that way we will keep having the ability to answer these. We answer 3 per week. And I will have the link like in the description for the podcast in the future. So whenever you listen to this in the future, there will be hopefully spots to fill up. Feel free to keep filling them. So our first one's for all of us. It's from Malay, Malay. And it's overall, what are some of the go-to units for Ariadne's vanilla or Cosmoflot army? What do you think the core, like, biggest hitting units are? And let's start with, let's say Dan.
I don't fucking know.
As the one who hasn't played Ariadne. Yeah, but it actually makes the most sense for you to answer, because whatever pops out first, your mind is like the key things that you would think of when that drops across the table from you are probably actually the top line things. Because if you know about them, then they're big ticket items.
Wait, vanilla Ariadne or Cosmoflot?
Yeah, both. But vanilla Ariadne and Cosmoflot. What are the big key ticket items?
Cosmoflot seems to be the bears. And then what's that guy called?
Wally?
Who are these characters? Oh, William Wallace goes in there as well?
Yeah, you can. You don't usually take him, though, because you don't need the inspiring presence that much.
No.
But if you're thinking of the Unknown Ranger, I believe he's in that list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unknown Ranger, the Mirage 5. Freaking jumping in behind you and murdering you in the back when I didn't even know they existed. Somehow I survived because I rolled really well and he rolled bad. But I would say the Bears, Mirage 5, and Unknown Ranger.
I would say that those are all good topics. I mean, especially Mirage 5. Even if you don't have Mirage 5 in your army list, everyone's going to be afraid you do.
Yeah.
So just because of the amount of camel markers that float around in Ariadne and Cosmoflot, because you don't know what their point value is, they could be anything from like a wildly cheap infiltrator to a super expensive infiltrator. You just don't know if those points off the board are going to just show up in your deployment zone and be like a dog in the back line. So whenever you play against those two armies, vanilla or actually also Merovingians technically because they exist in there, but Cosmoflot and vanilla in particular, you kind of just assume you're watching your back the whole time, or you're putting down deployables, or you're putting down mines or something. That's going to show up. Unknown Ranger is just a beast. I think that also makes sense. I would agree with that, Dan.
Yeah. Armor 4 is you're like, I hit him. Why isn't he dead yet?
And then, like, I think it's just you could almost set up with like total immunity pieces, right? So either the bears, the dog faces, which are also in vanilla, and then the it's not the Cosmos Soldat, it's the other one. It's the Volcalax, right? Who are also total immune. So all those total immunity pieces are wildly hard to stop, get where they're going, because you have to throw lots of dice at them. And without suppression or like neurocinetics, it's hard to throw lots of dice outside of active turn, which means they kind of get where they want to go. So I would say that those are highlight real units for me. Do you have anything you want to add on and you can think of?
I was just going to say the fact that the Volcalac counts as a rocket.
Mm-hmm. So
you have a core of guys who are as low as 8 points, being led by a TI Armor 4 T2 +1 damage rifle or HMG for dirt cheap. Like he's 36 points, and if you want to just like the absolute cheapest rocket link, it's 68 points for the 5 of them. Like he's gonna go and shoot anyone at armor 7, and you can't. He will never be worse than that, and he still has no wounding cap and super jump. Yeah, I think they're really good.
Terrifying. Yeah, absolutely. And you almost expect to see it. I think like to kind of like the answering of the question, it's like, what do you expect to see? Those are definitely highlight real things for me.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Volcaloc, Bears, Mirage 5, and then Dogs if you're vanilla. I think the other call out would be the SAS. In both vanilla and in Cosmo, because they're the like premier button pushers in Ariadna, and they're cheap too. They're like 20-ish points for the mimetism infiltrators. And they're the low end of 20. Like a lot of those infiltrator guys get into like 25, 26, 27, and up to 30. These guys, like the bottom is 20 points, 21 points for the FO. So all of a sudden you have your chain rifle, light shotgun,
assault infiltrator, isn't he?
No, they're just pistol. The assault pistol is the guy who has grenades for 21 points.
Yes, that's right.
The FO guy who is Captain Push Buttons. And because he's terrain total in the current state, he gets a bunch of super jump pretty often. And then he's martial arts too. Like he's also a fighter in melee.
He's wildly good for his point cost.
Yeah. And so like in the spirit of a bunch of cheap camo markers that are running around, he is not the cheapest. They have cheaper. And then the other standout is Uxia. Infiltration +6. She just trades her life and kills somebody pretty much every time.
Yeah, if you're going first and you kind of know or suspect who their lieutenant is, you can just like drop her as your holdback and just be like, I kill you.
Or just like they have any piece that's important and you go, all right, I need to roll a 16 and I'm right outside your deployment zone with my camo model. I walk past your front, so I'm in your back arc. I shoot you with my boarding shotgun. Or I walk into melee and surprise attack you with my D-charge. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So other than the Dogs and the Volcalax and Mirage 5, it's SAS and Uxia.
Definitely
Burst 5 assault pistol too. Dang.
Yeah, Burst 5 assault pistol is crazy because it's double assault pistols, right?
Yep.
She's only BS11, but hey, Burst 5 is Burst 5, especially with front attack.
And you're shooting them in the back. you just walked into their back line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wildly powerful, like for very few points. And of course, you're hiding those points too because they're going to start in camouflage, which is fantastic. And they start up midfield too.
And she has smoke and MSV. Like, that's rare as hell. Like, that might almost be unique. Like, the fact that she can smoke her own MSV.
Yeah, I think, does Dart have it or does she have Eclipse?
Because there's a bunch of them. Because Dart doesn't have MSV.
No, she has EM grenades. That's what she has, not smoke grenades. That's right.
Like, I don't even know where I would look to find somebody who had that.
She's pretty good.
And like also the fact that she's not a sledge in martial arts and she's got like the boarding shotguns, if you want to switch up and actually have like a high dice possibility or crack armor, she can switch to armor piercing damage 14.
Yeah.
She can template trade with it. Like there's a bunch of like serious I think like flexibility and versatility. And she's not that expensive for a named piece like that. In the current version too, I'm not super sure about what's going to be like in ITS15, obviously, because it's a new deck. But the fact that she's a named character, of course, gives her that long service thing, so she can do all kinds of extra, like net undermine, all those things where you require like veteran lead or whatever. Because she's got a name, she can do those abilities and those skills too. And then she's got D charges. She's incredibly versatile for her point cost.
Yep.
All right. Well, into question 2. This one is from Umset. Umset. UMHSEHT. Too many M's and H's in here. It's for all of us. It says, what is your best recommendation for a newer player that doesn't get to play often with regards to figuring out which profiles to use and how to build lists? Would you recommend just using the same list until you figure it out, or change things up and see what works? I'm currently looking at playing either Morats or TAC. You've actually done this the most recently, Owen, because you've basically, I don't want to say trained Dan, but you've been through that like process with Dan over the last year. What would you say from you like advising Dan? Your advice would be, and then Dan, what do you think worked the best?
I kind of just started bringing unique things every time, but I'm quite an experienced tabletop gamer. That's not like a bragging moment. It's just like a I spent so many hours playing so many different games that Owen's dragged me into. And so it's kind of, I feel like my learning process would be a little different. At the same time, Owen did put me through the ringer of like, here are the worst possible things that you can encounter in the game over and over and over again until I experienced them all. And I was like, okay, now I can start to build lists to try to get around those problems. So I definitely had elite training, I would say, compared to the average Joe. Probably stick with similar profiles so you remember the guns, and then once you start remembering everything, then branch out. Or if you encounter a certain problem, then bring a model that can solve that problem and just change a little bit at a time. That'd be my suggestion.
I mean, I think ultimately you just need to remember what got you before. Like, if you don't play that often and you don't really remember your previous games, maybe write notes, maybe do something like that for yourself. Because, like, I'll be honest, this building, it's not nothing. Like, it's important in Infinity, but it's not that big a deal. Like, what list you have is secondary to what's the terrain, who am I playing against, how am I going to use the guys that I've got, what's the objective. Like, all these things are going to impact way more than what list you brought. Your list is going to be relevant, like, don't get me wrong, but like, if you're like, oh, that's right, that's how that works, I die again, like, that's going to frustrate you way faster than I lost my game because my opponent outgot me. Like,
yeah, definitely. I do think there's some value. just remember and play good. You're such a great teacher.
No, just remember. Just remember why you lost. What made you lose the last game? Oh, I should have gone and done the objective. Yes, do that instead. How come I couldn't do the objective? I didn't have this guy. But what if I brought 2 of that guy? That's how you make a list.
Yeah, I think it's that post-game rundown. Like, when you change your list, I wouldn't change more than 1 or 2 pieces. I think it's some blend in between what he asked, where it's like, do you change out the whole list and just throw things around? I mean, I think some people can get away with doing that, but my thing would be you kind of build like core chunks of your list. Like, you find like a 3-man Harris that you really like and you keep running it over and over again, and you tweak like the other third of your army. You find the support pieces that you like and you keep that. And then what you end up having is this like modular kind of approach to list building after a while in your head, where there are like groups and clumps of mechanics that become interchangeable, and how you put them together becomes your unique version of list writing. Like, and I think we've heard Dan say that over and over again, where he's like, I really like the blue coat link, and I really like, you know what I mean? And Dan had these like sort of formations with like subsets within his list writing that kind of came almost in the first 2 or 3 months, like, to the front, and then he would kind of mix and match them over time. So I think it's a blend of what he's asking. I think you start off with like a core list and you switch some things out and you kind of fine tune it to the point where it's becoming like these more modular groups of pieces that then get put together into your list writing.
Well, there you go.
Nailed it. Solved it.
I used to show up to tournaments, not Infinity, but other tournaments, and I would write my list then and there. I'm like, what did I bring in my bag? I don't even know. All right, let's go.
That is Owen's 100% war machine. like teaching. Yep. What's in the trunk of the car today? Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, did we cover this? Do we think we got this one nailed? I think we do. I think we crushed that one. So then our third question for tonight, and the final question in this grouping, is the OMC for all of us. And this is a question. Why does close combat suck so bad? The rules feel completely different from any other role in the game, and the numbers are just ridiculous. And that ignores the confusion and frustration of, this is example, you run all the way across the board to the kick-ass fighter and then get to roll only one dice and hope you don't roll a 1 to your opponent's rando line troop rolling a 10. But then you also have to compare your martial arts to their martial arts. And oh, maybe there's natural born warrior. No, wait, it's no wounding cap. That's different. But wait, I shot you on the way in. So does martial arts count? Mimetism? But I have frenzy, so none of that matters. No, you're thinking of berserk, and so on. Now imagine this world. Player 1, Shinobu charges your line trooper. He's awesome in close combat. So she's awesome in close combat, so she's burst 4 on 15s. Player 2, my guy sucks. So I roll 1 dice on 10. Player 1, cool, let's roll. This is the hill I will die on. I don't know what the question is. I mean, he's kind of answering the question for us, as he thinks CC sucks, and it should be more like shooting, where your CC will increase your burst. What do you guys think? I'm going to hold till the end. What do you guys think about that?
No one uses CC, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, no one ever uses close combat in Infinity.
Okay, so the real answer, though, because you use it all the time, Owen.
I do not.
You do so.
I do not. It's only
screenshot or it never happened.
It's literally a myth. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, why does CC suck so bad? Because you're right. Like, it's a 1 dice game. Don't do it. I don't recommend it. You should avoid CC at all costs. Models who have a close combat ability, don't measure that as a value unless you just don't actually. Like, don't do it. There's a few models in the game who stand out as CC models. Shinobu is one of those models. But Shinobu, which you didn't mention, also rolls 2 dice base already. And that's why Shinobu is so good. And like, there's like 2 other guys with martial arts 5. There's a few models.
There's Saruto Gandos as well. There's like quite a few CC5 guys.
There really aren't, I assure you. Saito is the other one. I think there's 1 in combined.
No, Saito isn't.
Or it's not Saito. It's CC5. One of the other characters.
Your Jimbo. Your Jimbo CC5.
Yeah, Yojimbo. There you go.
Yeah.
Even characters who you'd think would be like CC5, like Achilles, are not CC5.
Yeah.
They're only 4. Like, you'd think he'd be martial arts 5 because he's Achilles or Ajax. Mm-hmm. Like, you have these characters who are like historical.
Well, those guys get berserk. And the berserk basically gets around you needing anything because you just take the hit back and then murder whatever you're touching. Berserk is like the better martial arts.
But I mean, no, it's actually worse. And also Achilles doesn't get that. But I was going to say
Ajax has berserk.
Ajax has berserk. But I was going to say the other guy who stands out as like a good CC is McMurra. Because he's pretty good at it, but unlike most of the others, he can trade hits with literally everyone. So like normally these like the Shinobu or Yojimbo, if they screw up, they just die. But McMurrow can screw up and go, all right, round 2. Let's re-rack, roll that dice again. I'm still alive.
To round 3.
Yes, McMurrow is very good. And that's why like he stands out. Aside from him, there's like nobody that I would be like, oh yes, of course, this is the guy. Like there's a few models that have fun melee weapons, like as I was saying about the Corsan, where it's like, he's like weirdly good. Fun fact, he bodies Shinobu because Shinobu doesn't get martial arts 5 and goes to CC 22 against 13-point randos 21. Why? Mm-hmm. Fuck you, Shinobu. Go to school. Like, you didn't figure it out. Like, it's silly the way that has gone out. But like the other people who stand out are like Diggers, who have +1 burst close combat weapons, and Beast Hunter, that one guy in Yu Ching who has the +1 burst explosive one.
Anybody with a +1 burst pistol is multiple dice in melee.
But the pistols kind of suck usually. Like, and also most of those guys with those pistols don't have good CCs. Like, there's a few. It's kind of Zamira, but she doesn't use her pistol because it's got EM close combat weapons, which don't do anything anymore. What I'm
saying is, like, if you have that, then you become the higher burst model, right? So that you have that chance of just going over whatever the low roll the 1 dice model has. Like, the burst is more of an advantage than the CC bonuses typically.
Fair enough. The fact that Hussein Al-Jabal, who is the head of the Assassins, is a worse CC person than Zulieka, the bartender who rides a motorcycle, is stupid as shit. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense lore-wise. It doesn't make sense mechanically. And yet the reality is, most situations, Zulieka is going to body him. Because either she's going to use her +2 burst breaker pistols or her double tap explosive close combat weapon. And Hussein's going to be like, oh yeah, well, you're only rolling a 19. And she'll go, cool, 2 dice. And like that right there is, the CC doesn't really work. You're right. And they've added new rules that have made CC even dumber because it used to not be as bad, where there's far less natural born warrior and far less extra burst in melee outside of having martial arts 4. So a bunch of the named characters who you'd be like, hey, it makes sense that Joan of Arc, William Wallace, Achilles, Hussein, these are all good assassin-y melee people. They should have multiple burst in melee. And they've all lost it because they bumped it to CC 5 and then didn't give that to anyone, but then gave extra burst on close combat weapons to just random guys. I don't get it.
Okay. All right. So there's Owen's answer. He agrees with our caller. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, when I see close combat skills on people, it's more of I've used a defensive mechanism. And if some idiot tries to run in and hit you in melee, if you have a high CC, then it makes it really dicey and not worth it for them. And then you're like, okay, they don't get that free weird smack on me, so that's nice. Like, when you have a tag and they get into close combat, vast majority of tags are not great in close combat. And it locks down the tag, and all of a sudden you can't even dodge out, you can't even do whatever, because if you have like CC like 15 or less or something like that, and they have CC like 27 with martial arts, then they get a +7 to their roll. And so there's like, they have to roll between like a 0 and 7, and you have to roll between like a 7 and 14 or whatever to be even have it. Like, so like the odds are actually like that. Like, they get pretty good that CC can be effective against people who don't have CC skills. But as soon as both people have CC skills, just run away. It's just not worth it. It's just so risky. And so, is CC bad? Probably. It's like that weird like side tool belt you have. It's like, oh, well, all else has failed, so maybe I'll try this.
I just think over time it has become less balanced. There used to be a lot of units that were kind of even, and now it's, if you're the guy who like you just called out is the idiot who tries to go into melee with a CC guy, that's kind of what you are. Like, if assuming they don't just template you on your way in, right? Because like that's the other thing that comes up with CC now, is everyone goes, I just lay my light shotgun on you. Go ahead, stab me. We'll die together. Anyway, go ahead, Ash. Explain why you like CC.
I don't like CC. I think CC. So here's how I'll start this conversation. I think that how you view close combat as a skill or an order in Infinity comes down to how you approach what it's for and how highly you value whether or not it should be a part of your game plan.
I can measure its value.
I can measure its value too. It is lower in point values in the points matrix used by CB than almost any other skills. You can have a very cheap troop with very good close combat skills. It is one of the lowest point valued skills that are available. So I think there's something deceptive there. I let you talk. Shut the fuck up. All right. So the fact that it is so lowly valued means that you have a wide variety of close combat troops in Infinity, which almost makes you feel like you should use them as close combat troops. But Infinity is first and foremost a modern combat game, and shooting is almost always better in modern combat. There's a reason they don't send soldiers into the field with swords anymore. But because it's trying to harness that anime aesthetic, there are models in the game that are close combat troops that are also equipped usually with guns of some type or templates that are usually more efficient because Infinity is first and foremost a game of tactical like gunfighting. So I think that what you need to do with close combat is realize that, one, you don't pay a lot for it. It's a skill that I think Dan has kind of wrapped his brain around by using defensively and having be a thing that protects you from other close combat troops more than anything else, but it doesn't cost you a lot to have. And two, if you have access to it, just like every other skill and piece of equipment in Infinity, it is going to be the rock to someone else's paper or scissors. It's either going to be a liability to you, like we just described with Shinobu, where Natural Born Warrior completely invalidates her like play deck, right? Where she's all of a sudden rock and covered by paper, or it's going to be scissors to paper, where there's a tag that is sitting around a corner, and you've got McMurrow who flies across the board, throws a smoke template on it, and then just walks into combat and cuts it in half. And trades his 27 points for, something like close to 100 to like triple his point value in the first turn. And that to me is the nature of close combat in Infinity. It has no more or less value than I think the designers have put on it in the points that you pay to get those close combat troops. And when it works, when you reach for that tool, when it's appropriate, you can trade way up in potentiality. With everything from a Shinobu to a lowly little Berserking Galwegian. A Berserking Galwegian or even what are they called? The not the Gakis and Pretas, but Gakis and Pretas, like, sort of a good example. The Tiger Beasts, right? You can trade way up and feel really clever doing it too. And even sometimes the threat of what they can do outweighs whether or not they actually end up doing it during the course of the game. So I think close combat in Infinity sits exactly where it should sit, where it is a situationally useful tool that can have incredible utility when you reach for it at the right time. But it's not a close combat game. It's a shooting game. It's a modern combat game. And people don't stab each other with swords in modern combat. They use guns and they use shotguns and knives and bullets and lasers and giant robots. So I think it happens about as much as it should happen to the theme of the game. I think that the premier troops that have like higher point values, they're paying for those point values because they also have things like combi rifles and -6 and like other stuff that makes them also useful, and they have another skill set on top of that, which is close combat, which makes them really good at doing that corner case thing when it comes up. But you don't rely on it. You don't make a plan to use close combat. But when it's appropriate and you have that tool at your disposal, or you have armies that have those tools at their disposal, like again, good example is JSA. They don't pay a lot for all their close combat troops, but they sure are littered in Berserk. And sometimes that can be real useful to fly across the table with a EM close combat weapon and just stab a tag so that it's just done for the game, no matter what happens, basically, because you're just going to hit it. And sometimes it doesn't matter, and you don't ever get to use that skill. So I think that my overall thing is that I approach close combat as not the point of the game of Infinity, but it's also incredibly handy when you need it, or when you have the opportunity to use it, and you have those tools at your disposal, and you recognize that they're there, and can then use them. So it's not really, I think, a question of why does close combat suck. It's why do you expect close combat to be good in a game that is all about shooting? Like, it doesn't need to be good. It needs to be good when you have the opportunity to make it good. I think that's it.
I think if you're going to have models designed that are clearly close combat guys, like Shinobu, like Al Jabal, they should be good at it. And they shouldn't run into random speed bump models that are better fighters than they are.
But that's your fault for using them against something they can't just kill. Because if you put Shinobu against line troops that don't have template weapons, and you know all that because it's open information, she will crucify them. And you can put her wherever you want with a dice roll. Obviously, that's a risk thing. But if you know you're going first, she can hunt down and kill exactly what she needs to hunt down and kill.
The templates isn't really it. It's the Natural Born Warrior, Corsan, and like equivalents like that. Those are the guys that I'm thinking.
But you just don't fight them, right? Like, or if you
sure.
If you have
but the thing is like
instead.
The point I want to make though is like you can say that like, oh, they can do other things. Like you're entirely correct that
I'm not saying she should do other things. I'm saying you should use her for the right things. Like if there's a paper, you don't run the rock at it. That's what I'm saying. You should never expect that works.
I think that in the spirit of what this guy is saying, that if you are a kick-ass melee fighter and you're paying premium points for it, now you are getting other things too. That's what makes you the premium. I think you shouldn't run into other fighters who, because of the way the mechanics have played out, are just unopposed better than you are.
Well, they're not unopposed. They're the 50-50, right? Like if you're taking the Corsan as an example, she goes from being I'm going to kill you, basically whoever you are, to this is dicey all of a sudden.
We're both going to roll a dice,
and you might trade up, and you might trade up crazy against me because you're worth a third of the points I'm worth. And I think that that's a choice. But that's a choice, right? Like you know, because those guys all have open information, none of them are in a camo state who those people are, and you choose to apply her to that or not. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I my opponent gets to have a turn too, is kind of where I'm thinking. Like, they should have to come and shoot you. They shouldn't have an Apache who's just a better fighter than Shinobu is in melee. Like, I think that's crazy. I don't think that Apaches for 16 points should be better CC monsters than Shinobu is. And it is better. It is better. There is no, like, Shinobu has +3 on the single dice. The Apache has +2 on 2 dice.
Yeah, but what damage are they?
And is Shinobu even available as a target because she's not in a camo state at the end of her turn? Like, there's a bunch of unanswered questions there, right?
Sure.
Did you leave Shinobu somewhere that Apache can get to it? Like, I think that when you compare mechanical things like that,
purely melee capability.
Yeah, but what you're talking about,
the mechanics of how martial arts interacts with the other mechanics of the game, and what makes you a good CC guy.
But those questions aren't taking into account things like the fact that she's an infiltrator, the fact that she can hidden deploy. So even if you go second, you can just put her somewhere way far away from wherever that Apache is going to be to make it totally pointless to go kill her. The fact that you can force a whip check to find her even to melee her.
I think you're missing the point.
You are 100% missing the point. I'm saying that I get she can do other things and she has points to get her into melee. I'm saying her ability as a premier CC guy is being undercut by the CC abilities of random assholes who have been added to the game in the last even 6 months. Like 5 of them got put into the game that are just better fighters than she is. And they've done
not better fighters than she is. They neutralize her advantage.
They are better in many situations. The only thing that they're not better than her at is clubbing seals. And even then, some of them are better at that. I
disagree. I disagree with that because
here's what I think Owen's trying to put is that if you're gonna make like shooting, for example, there's the BS15 or the BS14 guys with the big guns, and the little guys never have that. It's like there's your good gunfighters, and then there's mediocre gunfighters. The little guys kind of have the peace training chain rifles. In CC, there's your monster close combat guys, and then there's your it's just off the rails of everywhere. Of you can be super cheap with crazy good close combat, or super expensive, or anything in between, and it's not really a defined thing. Where
I disagree though. I disagree though, Dan, because I think that situational advantage comes into play just as much in gunfighting as it does in melee, where you pair up a cheap. You can trade up, for instance, a Galwegian or a a Foxtrot boarding shotgun to an Orc HMG at the wrong range. Where you come into the wrong range, you've got your shotgun with AP. You get to that +6 band, you come out of, surprise attack, cover, mimetism, and that guy is he can't use his machine gun, you know what I mean? He's got to use a pistol or something crappy, and you're almost at equal dice advantage, and you're hitting harder than he does. And you've got a cheaper troop fighting a more expensive troop, and you've mitigated all of his advantages. So what I'm saying is I think that's the game of infinity. Right. And there's always going to be pieces that you have to work around to get the full advantage of your piece. And that's existing in shooting, and it also exists in melee. And so that's why I'm like, I think it's more pronounced in shooting, because in shooting, the values and SWC costs can swing wildly, and you can trade up with templates, even that can be super cheap. Right. And it feels more dire in melee because melee troops are not as everywhere. Every troop's kind of a shooting troop, but not every troop is a melee troop. So it feels like a bigger deal, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the case the case I'm trying to make though is that the competition of the melee guys, they're not as highs because there are so many more things that they run into that are walls to them than there are for shooting. Like if you have a good shooting piece, he's always good in that range band. If you have a good melee, you have to fight only specific people because there's like a dozen versions of hard counters now.
I mean, that's not entirely true though, because he's always good in that range band until he has a thing that he's not advantaged against. Like he's always good over 16 until he fights that guy with mimetism -6 that's also good at 16. Right? Like an HMG is great at shooting over 16 until he fights a guy with min -6 with a marksman.
But then he still gets the active turn benefit, which
melee doesn't get. Versus one,
which melee doesn't have. And the few guys who can get stuff like that, they have to face the fact that some other models out there, for very little points, are hard countering the thing that they're designed to do. And like you're right, you can definitely pick your targets. Shinobu can go fuck up a tag. But the problem is like, so can an AP HMG, but the AP HMG does like a dozen other jobs, no matter what whatever chassis you put it on. Mm-hmm. And it does it with less risk at better chances. And like, you can say, yeah, well, the game's a shooting game. You should use that like that. And it's like, well, then why are we even fucking around with all these like CC abilities and scales? Because he's right about how confused it gets.
So here's the flip side then. It is because people don't tend to take these CC troops, or at least take them any proliferation. If your force has an advantage in CC, where you're probably never going to run into an Apache. First of all, you're only going to run into an Apache right now if you're playing against the reinforcement link, right?
No, they're in normal Merovingians as well,
but they're not in vanilla, right? So they're in a defunct faction right now. You'll run against Corsons and QK, so yeah.
How about just Maximus then? He's in like 8 factions. He's solid in melee. He's better than Shinobu. He'll probably beat her to death.
But he's also tag, right? Like there's things he can't do. He can't go prone. He can't hide. Like there's all like it.
Okay, but we're only talking about the CC skills, right? Like I get that there are a lot of.
But you would take Maximus for his multi-marksman rifle too, and you'll mostly shoot with Maximus. You're not going to mostly shoot melee with Maximus.
Sure, but Maximus, for very little, he has nullified the CC of other models that are out there.
Because like you said, there's lots of guys, right? Like there's lots of warrior out there.
I know, that's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, why have these models like Shinobu, like the Fides, like even the what's the Shazvasti one, the Speculo, who have these like really inflated costs because of their infiltration skills tied to their ability to get into melee and having decent melee stats, only to then have a like wall of guys who have come out that hard counter their ability to do their job, like the job that they're designed to do.
I think wall's an exaggeration. I think what you have is you have it on certain hard targets that make them not the thing you go after with those models, or make you not use the list that has those models in them. What I'm saying is, if you're playing against, you wouldn't pick Maximus because he has Natural Born Warrior, but Natural Born Warrior is a nice reason to be insulated, because you're insulated against martial arts all of a sudden. It doesn't stop berserking. Like, it doesn't stop lots of other things that are CC skills that aren't martial arts. Like, we're kind of hemming on like, well, martial arts sucks. Well, it also doesn't, because berserk is also a CC attack and is great and requires nothing from martial arts to get done, right?
Right,
and
but berserk also has an active turn only, be in line of sight the whole time, whole order.
But it's a CC thing, and active turn dodging has made it way easier to get off. Right? It's a whole order, but you get to move.
I mean, it was way easier when it was just all the time. I'll be honest. Active turn dodging is a thing that mitigates how bad it has become.
Well, it's always needed line of sight though. But you had to get into line of sight first before, right? It always required line of sight.
You could also ARO berserk.
Yeah, you could ARO to do it. That's all nice.
So, and that you could first skill walk into line of fire and then berserk. Like walk around a corner and touch him and go berserk. Like, I mean, to say that active turn dodging has made berserk easier is only to counter the fact that berserk got nerfed. But like, again, the point is that like, of these melee guys, like the ones who are these premier CC folks, there's a ton of melee rules, berserk being one of them. And I don't know, I get the perspective of like, this is a lot of work for skills that like they don't really benefit very much. Like you said, it's a shooting game and the CC doesn't do much. And I make the joke all the time that you don't use CC in Infinity because you shouldn't. Like, you're right. And I think that sucks. Like, I can be bummed out about it because I think you should make it where like these CC monsters are CC monsters. Make it active turn stuff. Make it like martial arts. Each level gives you a dice in active turn only. And like, see what happens. And like Natural Born Warrior reduces that dice by a certain amount. And Berserk is the same, but you can ARO Berserk now and like do stuff like that. Cause like all it does is change the way the melee guys balance against each other. And as you stated, like there's a whole bunch of hard targets for them already just because of templates and Sixth Sense and 360 visors. And then a bunch of guys who are cheap melee dudes who also have templates and CC to answer those bigger martial artists. I don't know. That's my feeling. I don't have an answer to how to fix it. It's just like I can understand where this guy's coming from about like it sucks 100% that you can invest in these melee guys and they can't do the job that you're paying for, and you're better off bringing.
They can't do it all the time. They can do the job that you pay for them to do, and they just can't do it all the time against everybody. And you're saying you feel like there's a proliferation of times they can now because there's more and more models that it feels like have some kind of counter martial arts.
Yeah, that like the models that were original, like the guys who if I asked you, do you think Joan of Arc and Achilles are good in close combat, and you didn't play Infinity, you'd of course say yes. And then it's like, now you're right, but what they really are is shooting pieces, because the real kings of close combat are 11-point motorcycles and a 20-point dog. It's like, what? Or
ironically,
a man wearing a power suit.
Yeah. Ironically, the dog faces aren't that good in melee.
No, with the exception of Guerrilla. Yeah, for 27 points. Yeah. Or the armed prospectors are actually one of the best CC guys. Like, what? Why?
Yeah. When you look at like models that, like for example, Shona Carano, where it's like if you pop off with her, oh my gosh, the potential damage. But like the 9 games out of 10, or 19 out of 20, or more like 99 out of 100, where she just dies because you're like, oh, but she could have done well. It's just kind of like, I look at the profile and I'm like, that explosive close combat weapon with AP will never be utilized. And it's sad, but it is what it is.
man, Shona, you really are cool. You're this like swords master who trains melee guys. This bronze has a taser. 50-50, you lose. Like, what? Why? Why is that the way melee plays out? Shona should beat a bronze in close combat. I don't know. That's just my perspective of it. Like, there's rules that have been stacked on that make CC fuzzy in ways that I feel that shooting doesn't have that. Shooting is like range bands and active turn and neurocynetics, and like there are things that make it dynamic, whereas CC is just like it costs so little for us to give these out in random ways that random models that you wouldn't expect are suddenly just really good at stuff or really bad at stuff out of nowhere, or it feels like it's out of nowhere. Like, why is the bronze so good in CC?
I feel like my stance is it's higher risk, higher reward, right? But you can trade up with it with certain models. The more premier the fighter, the more your chance to trade up higher with it is, and that's.
Oh, see, I think it's the opposite perspective. The cheaper the model, the more opportunity you have to trade up. Because the cheap CC guys who are crazy good at it right now, like that Beast Hunter with the double tapping explosive close combat weapon, the odds of him trading up compared to like 44-point Shinobu is so much higher.
So I don't just mean points, I mean opportunity. I mean that like a Shinobu or a Fide or a Specular Killer can just, if you're smart and you know what the model is, you can go kill the lieutenant and almost have the game over on turn one. Right. I'm not talking just about trading up from the point of view of like killing a bigger piece than you or a more expensive piece than you. I mean,
value. Trading for value.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What I'm saying is that like you can make a risk and have a play where you just seal the game basically in a move with those guys if you get it off right. And it's high risk because it might just explode or suck or not work. And I think that they're in that category where they're just high risk, high rewards, and there's a player skill requirement of knowing what your opponent has, knowing what good pairings are, knowing what the good matchups are, and where to put that piece that makes them, like you said, just not as that machine gun's always going to be a machine gun, right? It's point and click, quite literally, and it's a shooting game. But I think there's a lot of like potential in pieces with close combat skills when the opportunity arises. And so I don't think my take is that it doesn't suck, but they're definitely harder to use, and the game definitely punishes certain pieces with a lot of its current new releases. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, through like the proliferation of like natural born warrior and total immunity and stuff like that. Like dogs in general, Volkalax, like just walk over to Shinobu and she just stares at them like, what?
At least against them, she gets her 2 dice. The Beast Hunter just kills her.
Sure.
Like the fucking Apache and the other guys and Max and like I don't know. I guess I'm dwelling on Shinobu and the Assassins and the Speculos because that is their job. Like Oniwaban, Shinobu, Assassins, Speculo Killers. Like you can say, oh, they've got Mim 6 and they have combi rifles, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but the martial arts 5 and CC into the almost upper 20s, like they're clearly designed to be assassins who go into melee and stab you. And this guy who's wearing this suit of armor we found in the junkyard is even odds he just kills that guy. But the tag can't fight him because the tag he didn't find the +1 explosive gun. Like what? I don't know. I guess it's the.
I think we belabor this point.
Yeah.
This one's definitely in the ground right now. We have kicked this one to death.
Sure.
So the survey says that 2 of the guys think that close combat also sucks, and one of them thinks that everyone else is just bad and he knows better. So that's it for questions. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions, and please continue filling up the question bucket so we can have these disagreements and air our differing opinions through the medium of podcasts.
You're wrong.
So now it's on. The best part about being me is that I don't have to be right or wrong. I just exist. So the main topic tonight is going to be on reinforcements. And in particular, now that we have the reinforcement rules, we can kind of talk a little bit about what the future seems to be holding from reinforcements, because there's been some interesting things since the Army update, and of course since the release of the actual reinforcements document, just kind of clarifying how it's going to get used. Now, the one missing piece of the puzzle is going to be obviously ITS Season 15, which we talked a little bit about the spoilers last week, the last Gen Con spoilers, and what we were gleaning from the new card deck, some suppositions we made, like that it looks like there's going to be a initiative role decision on the the battlefield cards, battlefield conditions, and the operations cards. We're kind of guessing as to what that means, but probably that person that's taking the initiative is going to get to pick one, and the person that's getting deployment gets to pick the other, and that's going to be making those more consistently used throughout the course of missions and games. But what was really interesting this past week is that we saw that there's a lot of profiles sequestered inside of the reinforcement tab. They don't show up in like the main vanilla faction. There are a few that have bled in, like we just said, the Apaches show up in Merovingians, but there are tons of profiles and even tons of like new equipment profiles, like that sweet multi-marksman rifle Swiss Guard with the CC bonus, which I think is hilarious because it finally gets to use the giant sword. And like to an effect, that are just hidden inside of the reinforcement section, and some just brand new models like the blockers, all the new Neoterra stuff just like hidden in there. And what that seems to imply is that they really want us to use this reinforcement add-on, and they're going to release models that only exist inside this to try and encourage us to use it in ITS15. So how do you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel about the fact that there's going to be probably a whole wave of new releases that only get used if we use this add-on? And like that's kind of not forcing us to, but it's definitely like pushing us towards trying to get reinforcements using it this season.
I mean, it makes sense. Like I figured this would happen. It was like, okay, reinforcements is there. Leave it like this for a while to try to get people to actually play it. Otherwise, no one would play it.
Why do you think no one would play it? Can you expand on that?
Because people don't like change. They have their way of playing, and it's like, okay, well, this breaks everything, and people will play it, obviously. But I mean, like on a large scale, like the main kind of people are resistant to change, and so if you bring it as an like a different level of gameplay, it's just unless it like really adds something really cool. And I just don't think reinforcements. I think because, like we've talked about with all the like the current missions, it just breaks all the missions right now. So I feel like there's a lot of people who are not excited to play reinforcements.
Does it feel like they've got their list, they're comfortable with their list, they don't want to change how they're playing because they already are good with it, they don't want to learn again? Is that like kind of what you're saying?
No. Like I'm not even that excited to play reinforcements.
I think people always love new models. I think that there are some details about this reinforcement rule update that are like mega turnoffs. Like I really hope that they go back on what they said about Shazvasti. Did you know that if you're in your seed embryo state, you don't count as dead for reinforcements? That's cool.
Know that, yeah.
So that means that if you're playing Shazvasti and you're not allowed to bring in your reinforcements in turn 3, fuck you. And you pay for that skill.
Until turn 3.
Right.
3. Yeah.
And you pay for that skill for your guys to be dead and not be getting the benefit of your reinforcements. Like, that's crazy. Why is that the case? Why is it that the guy who you're required to take to bring in your reinforcements doesn't matter for the reinforcements, other than that it's a tax to bring him? Why not make them do something, some relevant piece to reinforcements? Like,
give an extra roll. Well, that could be a missing piece from 15 too. That we don't.
And this is the question.
I'm betting the comlink thing has something to do with 15. We haven't seen that because it doesn't make any sense that he's extra points if he's required.
Yep. So
and there's a lot of extra points too, not just 1 point.
Yeah. So I mean, it's super hard to say because, like, yeah, cool, having new game style and new profiles. Like, I think people are not interested. The ones that I talk to about it is because there's so much trepidation because it doesn't look good. Like, if you tried to play it in the current system, a bunch of scenarios would just fail, and a lot of the models that are coming in it seem really dialed up. Like that's my perspective, that there's a whole wall of guys in different factions here that seem like if you let these be in other sub factions or like allowed them without this reinforcement requirement, they would be absolutely nutty. Things like the Corsans and the Apaches, who are in effectively dead factions right now, and so they don't come up too often. But even those remotes that they had to make light infantry in Aleph, like these guys are no joke. Like, what is it? The Day one? Yeah, Day one, yeah. +1 burst, linkable 6/4, immunity total, dogged remotes. What the fuck is that? Like, that's so good for 19 points. And like, if I'm playing a game against somebody and he's playing Aleph, his reinforcements are going to be 5 of those guys in a link together. Like they are. You can go, oh, well, you know, there's choices for other things. And it's like, you're right. And the correct one was, I brought a 5-man team of triple tapping burst chain rifles who also had quad shot multi-pistols, who also have martial arts 2 and CC-22 with EM close combat weapons.
I mean, does it matter if they only show up on turn 3 though?
And this is where the mechanics of the game get all fuzzy, because it's
6
like
orders, yeah.
Kind of really it matters, because what they're going to do is show up and be 100 points in a zone and end the game for me. Sure, or they're going to spend their 6 orders so that they just bulldoze whatever I have left on turn 3, and then his remaining 5 orders in his main pool win the scenario. And because he went second, he got this. Or maybe I went first, and now I'm bringing in my 5 guys, and I blitz him, and then he drops in his 5 guys and blitzes me because I don't get any AROs, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, because they feel like a good go second reinforcement wave, but they don't feel like a good go first reinforcement wave on turn 3 because they don't really have any ARO presence. So you're just like hiding them in zones to get that 100 points to stick somewhere. And then hoping you don't get shot to death.
Arrow, like there's multiple burst, linkable, total immunity chain rifles. What are you talking about? That's not a good arrow piece. I would take that any day of the week.
If you're not,
and they start halfway
put them somewhere where they can't get. Yeah, you got to put them somewhere where they can't just get shot down.
I'm going to kill everybody when I show up. Like they're 6'4", and they start halfway up the board. Where are you going to hide? In one order, I'm in your deployment zone.
They're not bad. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that if those orders don't get you what you want, you're sitting with just chain rifles basically defending you on the bottom of 3.
Sure. And again, my opponent will just go, I drop my guys in such a way that I take the zones from you and I never activate it, because then you don't get arrows and I win the game. And you're like, cool, this was an engaging, fun time. Like,
so that's why I'm not shitting on reinforcements, but I'm just saying I'm still reserving judgment because the rules as is, it just doesn't work. And I don't think Corvus Belli is that naive to have that much stuff. So I'm just kind of reserving judgment. And for now, I think it's cool that like the crappy factions, quote unquote, that no one's really playing, like QK or whatever, they get the additional cool powerhouse new little minions to experiment with and people can have fun with, but then they don't introduce it to the other factions because it might just be all you see otherwise. So I kind of like what they've done so far, but it's kind of like for like normal play of like releasing them in a very limited release. But then as for reinforcements and how that will play out, like I don't see them going into a normal release because they're just too dialed up, I think, in a lot of ways. I think the profiles will change a lot if they get released to the public.
So my thought on that is I feel like we're seeing a new release strategy from Corvus Belli. And so a lot like you, Dan, I'm going to reserve judgment on the reinforcement rules themselves, because the rules feel secondary to what seems to be Corvus Belli basically having a template now for every year, taking 4 old factions that don't currently have rules, introducing some new models for them in a sequestered format where they don't interfere with the main body of the game, and testing them out. And then when that season's over, adding them probably not to their main like prime factions, but into a redrawn or re-released sectorial. Like, I'm going to guess that the four box sets we see over ITS 2015 are going to be Merovingians. They're going to be Extra, or like some like Onyx Contact Force probably. It's going to be whatchamacallit, Neoterra,
and
right?
QK.
And then it's going to be QK. We're going to see those four factions get box sets between now and next Gen Con. And then in 16, there'll be a new wave of reinforcements at Gen Con, and it'll be the next four factions that currently are in production. I would guess that you could, if you want to read the tea leaves on what's coming from Corvus Belli, this reinforcements format is going to be the way that they take old out of production factions, give them a few new models, put them to a side for the season so that they can tweak them and decide what they want to be, and then release those new models into these older factions and give them basically like a glow up. And I'm so down for that because, one, it means that they don't just dump like live hot profiles into the main game. You get a year's worth of like playtest data on them a little bit. Two, the whole reinforcements concept is brand new. And if we have one season where it's just an add-on and they're shaking the rules out with it and we can still play the core game, I'm totally fine with that. It doesn't change anything. You know what I mean? Use it or don't use it. If you want to try these new profiles out, then you play with reinforcements. Awesome. I see this as they want to make a more interesting way to introduce and revitalize factions over the course of their seasonal year. And this is the format they're choosing to do it with. And that feels, one, really smart as a business because they get some side playtest data and they don't just throw in these like overtuned profiles into the mix. Two, we get a changed up format, which I think when we see the mission pack, we're going to see like core missions and we're going to see missions designed for reinforcements. And I'm really hoping that what we get there is we get stuff that's, one, more just attuned to like what the reinforcement add-on looks like, which means all those problems that you guys immediately jumped on with like end of game scoring and stuff like that, putting points in zones, they just don't exist in those missions. Right,
yeah, if you front end score it a lot better, like one, it nerfs the turn one alpha strike, which is always a thing in Infinity, and then two, it would make the reinforcements way more viable because now it's
exactly
like you're playing catch up when your reinforcements come in rather than this is my ace in the hole to win the game.
Exactly. Which is what I'm going to guess is happening. I would be shocked if that wasn't the case. If that wasn't going to be what we see when we see the mission pack. I think we're jumping to a lot of ghost conclusions based on trying to fit what is a new set of rules into the current season, and the current season's over, right? Like Interplanetario is like a week. It's all done. Like it's,
right. So I don't know. I guess it's not over because one, these rules are live. It is not. Sure. There is no replacement. There are events still taking place. Like we're going to one this weekend. You're hosting one this weekend. Yeah. Like sure. I think it isn't. And you don't get to just wave your hand and go like, no, it doesn't matter. It's not real yet. It's like, because it is at right now. This is the state of the game right now. You can click the reinforcements tab and run an event right now. And if you're going to judge it right now, I got some problems. Now, will it get better with the new edition? Probably. Like, I'm not actually worried about that. But like, if we're going to talk about it in its current iteration, I got some questions. Like, I'm not going to be the first one to sign up for it.
I don't think any of us are going to disagree with it. That's what I'm saying. Right. But also, I think that it's like a live fire playtest right now. That's only going to have, when it's all said and done, it will have been 6 weeks of the season.
For sure.
Right. Is what it comes down to, and not anything that actually people earned ITS points on, probably, and not anything that's going to super be relevant. It's more like we get an advanced look at a mechanic, so that when that mission pack does drop, we're already familiar with the mechanic, which I think is a better way of doing things. So I'm just coming at it kind of from a different side, and I'm really excited if this is the format they take over the next couple of years to see these factions get glow-ups, because there's a lot of cool history and stuff in these factions where they can do new models for them now and give them, I think, like a really cool modern look that Infinity is like capable of giving models now.
So again, I have very little history with I'm like less than a year in with Infinity, right? Mm-hmm. Like well under a year. And I got the impression that they were just reducing it down to 3 sectorials per major faction. But they took out Capucalchi, which is weird. But it's like playable out of catalog. But like, what the heck does out of catalog mean? Just temporarily until they re-release it? Has that happened before?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's they've never had that tag on anything before, right? But that's because this is the first time Army has been parsed this way. But playable in a catalog basically means we don't currently have the miniatures in production. What I think is cool about having that in the Army app is that people know what they're getting into. If you
Oh,
buy
so that
server
didn't
side
that
miniatures right
didn't
now,
change anything. That was just a more honest way of advertising their army.
exactly.
Okay.
So if you go and like try and research getting into Infinity, you just know right now what's going to be easy to acquire and what's not going to be easy to acquire. What they're currently producing models for and what they're not currently producing models for. And I guarantee that that tab will change when like what happened with the update for Bakunin happened, right? And all of a sudden the new Observance pack comes out and Bakunin gets this like mid of the ITS season update with a bunch of new profiles. That tab will go away and they'll switch out. And then maybe every year a bunch of the current armies get that same treatment and they go into that tab and they become the models out of production. It just feels like they are being more transparent to the consumer as to what is currently being stocked in their warehouse and what isn't.
Yeah, screw you, Toha.
Yeah, man, Todd didn't sell well. They're the squats of Infinity. They came out, they were neat, they didn't sell, and yet they somehow still will events because Fairware is OP. Because the Tagma, no, whatever the one is that has endgame, being able to ARO in your just kill models with wounds inside your zone of control with no line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, and that was we've talked about that a little bit, where it's like the I think Toha do better than Toha would otherwise do, purely because in a game of we're all using the same tools, they got 2 extra tools.
Yeah,
and they don't play by the normal rules. Yeah, Symbios and Fairware change the math on how Toha functions in the same way
and people don't know how it works either, which means they don't account for it when they let's go.
Yeah, in the same way the NA2 armies I think skew a bit above because they're taking the tools that everyone had, but they bring them in combos that are unfamiliar.
Aren't available anywhere else. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, look at the Toha reinforcements. They definitely brought in something new so that you could. No, I'm just kidding. It's Toha.
I'm just kidding. Everybody hates Toha.
They got a whole bunch of shit I can't pronounce and don't care about.
The last thing I do want to talk about, though, is the Squallow controversy, where for about 5 minutes, no, like a couple, maybe a day, the Squallow Mark 1 was gone. It just didn't exist. And there was and then there was a question about it on the forums. And one of the CB staff said, we are no longer going to produce the Squallow Mark 1, so it's no longer a profile. And everyone went, what? Because it's a mainline battle tag. And it's the size 7 tag that vanilla
I think the real answer
has.
What is, well, what about this here? Playable but out of catalog. What was the point if you're just going to remove
That was the point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just
and
do
they
it.
Put him back in. They put him back in as in like an interim case.
Kill him.
But like wanted to get rid of it. I think that's crazy. To be fair, I think it's crazy mostly because one, that's very out of character for CB. They don't tend to make, and I had this argument, I think an episode ago, where you're like, why would I have these profiles that don't exist anymore? It's like, yeah, but a knight that can be a different knight that's still size 2, and there's like a bunch of knight profiles that you could use the miniature for because they're just guys with bunny ears, is a bit different from like a size 7 tag. You know what I mean? Where it's like they've never really gotten rid of a size 7 tag before.
I don't think that's different at all. I think a size 2 becoming a size 5 is as much of a you don't exist anymore as a size 7 not existing who could just pretend to be a different size 7. Like that's the same argument. Like the logic is there.
What it would mean is that Vanilla Pano has lost their vanilla tag, period. Right?
Yoda missed the vanilla tag.
Statements. He's definitely not. He's the Sparlheim attack.
And the Squallow is the Varuna / Neoterran tag. I don't understand the point here.
It's the
Squallow was originally the Neoterran one.
It was the original tag. So the original tags in Infinity period were the Squallow, the Gueja, the Salamandra, the Cascuda, the Avatar, and what packs am I missing? Hackaslam and the Magribagard. Those are the original Infinity first edition tags, and they've always been around, and they've always had miniatures. They used to have 40 mil miniatures, now they have 55 mil miniatures. So like what I'm saying is, from like a historic point of view, those are the original 6 tag miniatures. So to get rid of the Squallow kind of feels like a bigger deal than just like this named knight or this named guy in cargo pants from Hack Islam or whatever it ends up being. It's an emotional thing. It's not a practical thing that I'm saying here, Owen. It's more of a big deal to retire a model that was like a poster model. Basically.
I mean, I was making the case on that previous episode that they should just wipe out half of the profiles. So like, I'm like, yeah, do it. If we're on board, go for it. Like we're playing that game already with military orders, and other factions I'm sure have it coming. Like, go ahead. Like, I'm not sad about it. The proxy culture's fine. Your Squallow is now a Drago. Your Squallow is now a Cutter. Your Squallow is now a Yoda.
Yeah.
Like, you could be anything.
I'm just commenting on the fact that they then reversed it and put it back in.
Yeah,
on like an interim basis. So that was.
I think it's super weird to do one of them and randomly and not announce it and also take it back. That screams more like somebody pulled the trigger when they weren't supposed to, and that like that trigger. And people saw the Squallow, but I mean, were other things that all got removed during that time? Is there a whole wave that's going to get taken out?
Well, the argument was the Squallow Mark II was replacing the Squallow Mark I. And it's like, but they're very much not the same.
Yeah, the Squallow 2 is way better.
Yeah, it's pretty smaller.
He's better in a bunch of ways.
I think the thing with this, because the Squallows are different sizes, they're like, well, now Squallow is size 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, it's not size 7 anymore. Your Squallow is size 6. So they removed the 7 profile because now it's going to be confusing. But you're like, it's the Squallow.
Yeah, the size 6 does everything the size 7 does, except for he doesn't have ECM -3.
And 2 points armor.
Sure.
And 2 points of armor is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but that's what you get for being size 6.
Anyway,
that's true.
I find it annoying that it happened with the Roadbot too, where they're like, this is going to be playable in 012. And then everyone assumed vanilla, and then it didn't come out with vanilla. And then everyone's like, rah! And then they put it in vanilla. And I'm like, I'm cool for more options, but it's like, you cater to the mob, and now you've opened a can of worms. And now you've catered to the mob again. And now, where does it end?
Yeah, I miss my corporations just ignoring their player base. I am unironically actually in that state. 40K killed that for me, and Infinity, War Machine killed it even harder. Where I'm like, you know what? Have a vision. Have somebody in there who's got an idea of how the game should be played and how they think it should be played, and just stick to your guns. Don't let the voices outside speak to it, because they're only going to say stupid shit. Like, if you have some other idea, you should just sell that idea. And like, if you let every voice talk, a lot of those voices, they don't have anything good to say. Like,
it's like, well, a lot of those voices, they only have their own perspective.
I'm one of those voices. I'm saying kill half the game. Like,
look, there's a famous quote that's like, there's a million ways to change the world, and very few change it for the better. You know?
Yeah,
that's true. Like, yeah, that's a good one.
And so it's like, it's the same thing with the games, right? It's like you created this world, you created this game, and if you just like let anybody just come in and be like, no, this is how you should do it. This is how you should do it. And it's like they didn't design the game. They don't know anything. They think that's what they want, but it's like a child with ignorance being like, I want popsicles all day long, and you're like, okay, here you go. And they're like, oh, my brain hurts. Why did you do this to us?
Yeah, I think what a less hyperbolic way of saying what you're both saying is just that you need to be very careful when you take outside feedback, how that relates to the vision you have for what you're making, and then what is the perspective of the feedback you're getting, because typically it's narrowly pointed at a single aspect of what you're trying to do. And inevitably, if you listen, I think, to very specific requirements based on very specific things, you will drive your creation in a direction. I think the good example you talked about was that War Machine hyperfixation on game balance, where they vastly disrupted their ability to sell miniatures because everything was only valued on the metaphysical. It was never valued anymore on the physical assets they were making. So no one cared if something looked cool or had a cool story anymore, and they just stopped buying it because tomorrow the thing you bought could do something totally different than what it did today. And so your investment was subject to like constant change. And I think that's a good point about the Squallow, is that for a long time, Corvus Belli was very consistent in that, like, they very rarely made anything worse. They typically only ever improved things that didn't seem to get used very often. And nothing went out. Even if it didn't have a miniature, they typically kept the profiles. Now, that doesn't feel like it's sustainable forever, right? There's going to be a time at which point your catalog's too big. And so I kind of understand that inkling to get rid of the Squallow Mark 1 based on the Squallow Mark 2. But at the same time, it does seem out of character. So I can also understand why there was a big emotional reaction, right, to that happening. And some people commenting and wondering why, because it was something that was out of character for what CBE normally does. So I don't know, it's going to be interesting. They've got a real, I think, balancing act to do as their catalog continues to expand, especially if these reinforcements get rolled in, end of season with maybe faction glow-ups. And all of a sudden you got to release new models, and then you're going into a new season where you're going to do it again. What goes in, what comes out, and how do you continue to prune that massive amount of models? The one thing we're definitely seeing right now is we're seeing that they don't put every miniature into the prime factions. It used to be that every miniature went into vanilla. It's not happening anymore. There are faction-specific miniatures that don't end up in the main lists, and that's probably a good thing, because it means that when you kill certain things off, the big pool doesn't get too much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with there being, I just want to clarify, I'm okay with there being like feedback and like listening to customers, right? But it doesn't mean you listen to everything.
It means that you take it as a spectrum, I think, is what I'm hearing you say.
The robot thing, so the robot controversy, I was like, whatever, it's fine. And when it happened to the Squallow as well, I'm like, I'm starting to get concerned. Like, I'm not concerned yet, but I'm almost concerned. I'm like, this could go in a bad direction, and so I'm hoping it doesn't. But it's kind of, we'll see.
I do have faith. I do have more faith, I guess I would say, in companies who do have the ability to make decisions that don't make everybody happy, because it's good for their longevity, or it's good for their business plan, or it's good for their like vision for what they want to make. And I think I'm with you a bit on the, like, it's okay if this happens every now and again. Absolutely. Companies should own if they think that something, maybe they made a decision that wasn't exactly what they wanted to do, and maybe it doesn't quite align with what they want to be doing. But if that happens all the time, if they're just always constantly on apology tour and saying how they're going to make it better and we'll fix everything you want us to fix, that starts to become concerning.
It just seems like, okay, like if it was like one dude releasing stuff, he's like, oh yeah, I screwed up. But it's like, if it's like a major miniature company, where like, where's your like stop, like where's the quality control? Like who's going over this? And like there should be a lot more, like, if something leaks through, there should be like a very rare occurrence.
And also at some point, just be confident with what you made, right? Like, you made something, and if it's not perfect,
get rid of it.
Yeah. Just own it, exactly.
Yeah.
Just be confident with your decisions. Just stick to them. I think there's a balance in between what Owen said and what you're saying, Dan. Where, like, you gotta be able to make
how many profiles
informed decisions
are in vanilla Ariadna? Not the sub profile.
Did you count them all?
Just the text. I did.
How many? Yes. Okay, how many?
Take a guess. Just a quick guess off the top of your head.
Wait, Ariadna.
Just a vanilla Ariadna.
Vanilla Ariadna. I'm gonna guess 75.
Dan, you want to do a quick shot? 5 seconds.
74.
87.
Oh, you're so close. I got the over-under, though.
And that didn't include the ITS Corsair and Sectec. So like
87 profiles. Wow.
now that is not the sub profiles. That is not
Yeah, that's just the
combination
name.
thereof.
That's the unit names. That's just unit names.
Rotok, Straylock, Unknown Ranger, Metro,
Yeah.
Isabel, etc., etc. There are 87 of these. Sorry. I don't know how many are in Yuching, and I don't know how many are in Pano and Hawk Islam and Nomads, but the slidey bar on my screen is pretty much the same size. So you're looking at plus or minus around 90 for all of these factions. It's crazy. If the Squallow disappeared, I'm surprised people even noticed. Like, if it wasn't that he was a tag, if he was generic light infantry number 25, goodbye.
Yeah, and if you pull out the mercenaries, let's say
guys, Octavia Grimsdaughter is no longer in Pano. Like, right?
Yeah, so it's just like, who? I don't even know who you are.
It's like that 3-year-old that has like the toy beside it, and then you're just paying no attention to it, and then you take it away, and you're like, "Oh, motherfuckers!"
You don't understand. The mech engineer in Yuching is key to my gameplay. Like,
it's key to my happiness. My happiness profile and experience is completely based upon this.
Yeah, guys, you desperately need cube Jaegers in Hawk Islam. They're the thing that makes the faction go round. Odalisks are the most important unit, and they've been key to the success of the faction. Like, that's why I'm like, I don't mind if the Squallow got deleted. Like, hey, that kind of sucks. But like, where's that meme of the guy from the one movie where he's like, first time he's getting hung? Like, hey, I don't know if you've ever played anything
about a Buster Scruggs.
Oh, so we got the Buster Scruggs where he looks at him and says first time. It's like, oh, they're deleting the thing that you like. Welcome to game.
Yeah, that's true.
It's in everything. There's video games,
a lot of
additions.
Yeah,
like it is. Like somebody out there will have a collection of all the profiles that make up the game, and there's probably
someone out
like
there well, someone out there inevitably it's going to be their favorite profile too.
Of course,
so you just have to accept that if you get rid of it, you're pissing somebody off.
Do you remember when JSA got taken out of Yuching?
Oh yeah,
and
I do because I was playing them and people were mad I was playing them.
There was the whole thing about the Toketsu or Tokusetsu Butai, compared to the mech engineer, whatever he was.
Everybody took him because he's 1 point cheaper.
Because he was 1 point cheaper, and they're like, this guy is a fundamental piece of the Yuching army, and you're taking him away. And the reason why is that as a doctor, he was the 1 point cheaper alternative to the doctor that was based in Yuching. And so they reduced the point cost of the doctor by 1.
Yeah.
And you're like...
They're like, well, fine. Here, the mech engineer's a point cheaper now. They're like, fuck you. This is so funny.
Now, amusingly, mech engineer is now a point more expensive. That's neither here nor there. We've gone full circle, and it doesn't matter anymore. Because it never mattered in the first place. Like
it did not. No, you're right.
Yeah, and so like for them to get rid of that Squallow, like, does it suck? Kinda, but like the little Squallow does do what the new Squallow does. He is not. He is a side grade. He is not a downgrade.
Yeah,
like,
and I will proxy my first edition Squallow as a Squallow Mark II because he's already on a 40 mil base and he's already size 6. It's perfect. We're going full circle. We've gone Squallowception, where my OG Squallow will now be a Squallow Mark II until that law comes out.
Do I like that the tags that are all coming out are size 6? Absolutely not. I like the big stompy robots. I'm glad
they can hurdle, and they can also hurdle up bigger buildings. I like the big size 7s and just walk around the table wherever they want.
I'm glad that Cascuda kept size 7. And like I look at Neoterra, and if the Squallow itself is gone, then it's got 3 size 6 tags. Kind of weird, but sure, why not? Yeah. I don't care. That's ultimately it. I think they should get rid of more. Like, get rid of more. Take them all. Reduce it.
Get rid of more. Well, here's the thing: is it also feels like getting rid of more doesn't mean forever. It means for now. You know what I mean? Like with the Merovingians starting to come back, and like this, like the extra coming back. Like I feel like we're very fatalistic as miniature wargamers, where we're like everything is black and white. You know what I mean? It's like everything's gone forever, and it's like, well, yeah, but it might come back, and then it does. Like I just painted a squad army. Right? Like you don't need to things can go on the shelf for a while and then come back later. It doesn't have to be forever. Maybe it doesn't have to always be 30 years like it was for it was like 20 years for the squats or 25 years for the squats to come back. But it doesn't have to be forever that the squall is gone. It can just be until they make a new squallow. And in between now and then, they don't want to have to deal with balancing all these profiles. I think I'm fine with that. I think we don't have to be so
reactionary,
bipolar and reactionary. Yeah, to like the stuff happening.
Chicken Little. The sky is falling. You're like, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah. Now this is on the back of talking about how reinforcements is
terrible and CC is bad.
CC needs a redo. Can we get a once over on how close combat in the combat game works? I'm sure that won't take very long.
I love that we met back in like a reasonable discourse at the end of all this. We managed to simmer down. We worked some shit out on close combat, and
I'm just frustrated because you never understood what I was trying to say. But that's okay. I will go past
Owen. Just treat me like a non-native.
Yeah, I won't.
Right. Exactly. I like that's a callback from 3 episodes ago, but it's still so relevant. No one's mad. No one's listening to him when he didn't actually listen to any of us for like 8 years. I listened to everything you said. I just didn't care because it wasn't correct.
There you go.
That's all that matters. I'm just pulling my inner Owen.
You're entitled to your incorrect opinion. That's fine.
That's right. You're entirely entitled to your wrongness.
Yeah. More of a story.
All right, we did it.
Go away, Squallow. Cut them out. No more Squallows.
Kill it all. No more Squallows. Kill it all.
If you click on the Neoterra on the web app, the Squallow doesn't generate an order.
Perfect.
Wait, what?
It's like a tiny like graphical error. But
incredible.
Yeah, if you're on the computer, you click on a unit and then top left it shows like profile, Q, regular, whatever. The Squallows just says hackable.
Our next big bit of info and news is supposed to be at the Nova Open, where we might do a little divergence and talk about Warcrow, because there's supposed to be like a big Warcrow reveal there. And while this is an Infinity podcast, it'll be interesting to see what kind of pivoting they're doing to promote a brand new game. That's not a Kickstarter, not a crowdfund. It's like a big brand new game. So as we wait for this Warcrow, their fantasy game, that Owen didn't know about clearly.
I just don't.
They're doing a fantasy game. Yeah. It's their fantasy, fully fleshed out Warbands fantasy game that comes out relatively soon. And they're doing playable demos at Nova Open, and hopefully some more Infinity spoilers then too as we wind down this ITS. And then we'll also probably do I think we should also do a post interplanetario breakdown, and have a look at the lists that went to the World Championships and did well, and see what rounded out this season. So I think it'd be interesting to break down those lists and look at them and be like,
D&D.
Yes, D&D.
It is entirely D&D. This is just a D&D player character sheet.
There you go. Perfect.
Huh.
We'll dig into that later, though. And this will become Crowcast 2023. TM. We take that name. You guys aren't allowed to steal Crowcast. And that's it. I'm going to bed.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.